Shalom, 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 shalom. This is Naaman with the Great Millstone Camp here in DC. Back for another video. But first and foremost, call halal Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rikah Hakwadash, and of course, double honors go out to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone who deserve double honors and rule well. All right. Also, salutations should go out to the fellow Akim that are out there on the highways and byways pushing the truth across the four corners of this earth. All right. And this is done in order to wake up the remaining hopeful elect of our people because time is very short. All right. And this is the reason why. All right. These many videos are uploaded and go out over the social media sites. All right. So that the target, of course, is the elect. But we realize a lot of you view this as entertainment. Well, shortly, and I do mean shortly, you just may regret that. In fact, I'm pretty sure you will. All right, because this is very serious. All right. Let me get the copyright disclaimer out of the way. This is a copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair uses are used permitted by copyright statutes that might otherwise be infringing. But nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. All right. So we're going to get to, of course, a little history here. And for those of you that followers of history, you start to see a pattern. And we're going from the days of, let's just put it at World War II on up, where Jake, coming back from the war, although we were unable to take full advantage of the programs that were allotted to, the Caucasian or Edomite veterans, those programs, and then during the 50s and 60s, and then LBJ after Kennedy was assassinated, and he had his Great Society and legislation that came out of that era during the 60s. Jake had started to make some progress. Now, granted, at the turn of the last century, Jake was doing his own thing, and of course, that didn't go over so well with who. So they took great pains, all right, to tear everything down, actually burn everything down and drown everything that Jake accomplished. It was an embarrassment. Here we have people that we had in subjection to us for roughly 250 years. And then all of a sudden, in 1 or 2 generations, these people are doing better than the majority of the people that had them enslaved. Well, now that doesn't look too good. So there you have the Jim Crow era. Lots of lynchings and actually terrorism that was aimed at keeping us in line. All right. Hopefully to stunt our growth, but that still didn't turn out the way that they wanted to. So I'm just setting the scene here for this video. And wow. So all these places that we built in order to get away from being terrorized, well, some people with common sense would say, well, damn, you didn't want these people around you, so they were doing their own thing. Why would you continually fuck with them? You won't let them go. All right, we found that out during, the Lincoln era, because one plan was to uh, repatriate us, so to speak, back to Africa. There was another plan to have us go to Haiti. That was during the Lincoln era. Uh, Said it was too much to let us go because the money, the amount of that would they would have lost didn't exist then. All right. So the bankers, the elites, said, no, we can't have this. So that whole thing was a farce, as it turns out. And then the South tried to rewrite history. You got to remember, as the saying goes, the North won the war, but the South won everything else. And that is true because afterwards, what is it? The Daughters of the Confederacy, I believe, is that group. They more or less during the South, where I grew up, or Mid South actually, but generally the South. Guess who had power over the books and everything that you used in school and all that? And they tried that strategy with the how's it phrased? Um, Something sympathy for the South, the Confederates, some shit like that. Anyway, I can't remember it right off uh, verbatim. But in any case, yeah, and they were allowed. They made agreements. These officials, both North and South, because a lot of you are so caught up in that. Oh, well, the North was, but no, it wasn't. You're talking about the same people overall. Don't get caught up in this North versus South shit. All right. All these people are wicked when it comes to us. We have no friends, period. And you're going to see that in this video here. So enough of me rambling. Remember, this hatred between Edom, the descendants of Jacob's brother Esau, and our people, the descendants of Jacob, this is biblical. All right. And it's going to be this way until this animal is taken out of the power seat. Because of the curses, he has power over us. So the day that I'm looking forward to, and a lot of others, is the day that he doesn't have power or access to us. Because we're still in slavery. He makes so much money off of our misery still. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the video. This is from Manny J. Wright. How Reagan ruined Black America. And I want you to listen very carefully because there's something he says as a catchphrase that you might associate with someone else. So here we go.
Reagan didn't need to say black to declare war on us. He didn't have to. He used words like welfare queen, law and order, and the war on drugs. But who was he really talking about? When Reagan took office in 1981, black communities in America were just starting to see real progress after centuries of legal denial against them. Then he pulled the rug, slashed housing, cut education, dismantled welfare, and called it reform. At the same time, he militarized the police and jump-started the war on drugs. A war that didn't go after the Wall Street coke users, but instead went after the low-hanging fruit, the black Americans and black communities across the United States. The language sounded neutral, but the impact wasn't. This is how the system reinvented itself, and we're still paying for it today. This is Reaganomics 101. I remember being a young child, and I remember there being local programs in our communities, whether it was these various community centers that had, elders and adults who would provide opportunities for us to do any number of things, whether it was sports, whether it was, additional educational training or tutoring. And, and there used to be double Dutch competitions, and the young girls who were good enough, they would travel across the region and across the country and these other competitions against, girls from other cities. And it was very communal. And the same with the drill teams. You had these drill teams, these young boys and
Mm-hmm.
these young girls who would travel across the region and across the country for these competitions, not to mention the summer programs where you had teenagers who will work during the summers, high school and college students who will work at camps, for elementary and middle school kids, and they would spend the summers together and they would go on trips and vacations. And then towards the end of my high school years, all of this finally just this whole infrastructure just disappeared. So basically, we're talking about what life was like for Black Americans after the civil rights movement. So things like affirmative action, public housing, and welfare were designed to correct centuries of legal mandates against Black progress. So Reagan takes the helm around 1981.
For those who've abandoned hope, we'll restore hope and we'll welcome them into a great national crusade to make America great again.
His
Uh-oh.
administration
Did you catch that? For those of you that thought this was something new.
America great again.
his administration
What?
started to immediately
National crusade to make America great again.
his
Uh-oh, but I thought the reason I told the story at the beginning is because there's a pattern here, as I mentioned. Every time Jake gets to a point where it looks as though they don't need these Edomites, this is how you know that we are specifically targeted. All right. And this is despite what these other people say. And I'm expressly talking about these immigrants. They like to talk a lot of fucking shit. They're not looking at the big picture. Everybody likes to pile on Jake, especially here in America. All right. And these, by the most part, are our own people. I'm talking about from the Caribbean, from even here in, Central, South America, hell, even north of us, all right, here in the Western Hemisphere. And this is by design. But it's like, motherfuckers, you all don't pick up a history book, or even if you don't read, you can't get on YouTube here and search shit out. Oh, but that's it. See, that's the thing. With what's going on now, like I said, it's a pattern. And for the most part, because Jake is so, what's the word I want to use? Compassionate. And Jake has just been, used to just reaching out to everyone, but that has changed. Because we've been doing this over and over and over again, and we keep getting shitted on. And now Jake has just stepped back and said, you know what? Because Jake has been a shield to these motherfuckers. And they were unable to experience what we were trying to tell them. Thinking, well, if we tell you this and try to describe and show you who you're dealing with, maybe you wouldn't have to go through what we were going through. I don't know what we were thinking, but now it's like, oh, now you're catching it. You didn't believe us. Wow, we were trying to tell you what this devil was all about all along. But what did you do? Call us lazy. All of this because Jake, despite what things have looked like, because what they're doing now is, again, stripping us of things. They're taking down, actually, they're going further now because they're taking down taking history, trying to rewrite it in front of your face through legislation, threatening institutions if they don't go along with what they say, they will either suspend funding or pull it altogether. What kind of shit? And people are seeing this and they're like, see, this is what we were trying to tell you all along. This is who you're dealing with. This is who we've dealt with for centuries, but you didn't want to listen. This is why you don't see Jake out in these protests. And why should we? For people that have hated us. But you're seeing live. All right. And you people are experiencing. And you're still complaining, well, why aren't you out there? Like, duh, get a clue. Again, this is the curses that were put upon us. All right. Our people. And the ones that were making fun, well, they're experiencing it now. Because this so-called white man, this self-professed white man, whose biblical nationality is Edom, these are the elite banking families, the ones that actually run this world. All right, and those that look like them, that buy, what's the word? One of the benefits that they had, I'm talking about the lower classes, is that they did. Have to go back to Bacon's Rebellion. All right. But are you supposed to feel sorry for these people that have, jumped on that bandwagon and were allowed such privileges as long as they screwed over us at the behest of the higher classes? Fuck no. You can't absolve them because they're going down with the ship, so to speak. All right, we're talking about this is how the Most High deals. Every Israelite was not wicked. And we were all punished. The same goes for them. All right. So back to this. The curses, I'm thinking of, Deuteronomy 28 in specific. How you identify, the Israelites. And from 45 on down, let's get that real quick. All right. Because these people know who we are. All right. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28. All right. And it said these curses will be a sign. All right. Blessings for obedience. And this is what Moses was telling the Israelites. All right. If we were to hearken unto the law, statutes, and commandments, all right, this covenant that we agreed to, all right, then all will go well. And from here, verse 1 through 14, all the good things that would happen. But at 15, what does it say? Curses for disobedience. And guess what? Yeah, you got it. This is what. So from 16 to 68. Oh, yeah. And let me get to my point here. Verse 45. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Most High, whose name is Yahweh, thy God. Not everybody. This is talking to Israel. To keep his commandments and his statutes, which he commanded thee. And guess what we did? We didn't do this. And they shall be upon thee for a sign. Which means those people that are currently over there, they're not going through this. Now, you might find people that maybe one or two of these might apply. Very few. But every one of them, again, it's signaling to you. All right, this will be an identifier. All right, and they shall be, talking about the curses, upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed, meaning this is a bloodline thing, forever. 47, because thou servest not the Most High Yahweh thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. Therefore, verse 48, shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Most High shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. Now, when you go and look up yoke of iron, whose images is going to come up? Let's do that. All right, because he's telling you this is going to be a sign no matter where the Israelites are. We have to go to our oppressor for all things. We don't own shit. We don't produce shit. So who is that describing? All right, let's go here. Yoke of iron. Deuteronomy what? 28 and 48. Uh-oh. Well, let's look at images. Who do you see? You don't see the them folks, the Israelis. Who do you see? Yokes of Iron, the movie. All right. That's a young LeVar Burton there. Roots. Look at here. Look at this. Yokes of Iron. Uh-huh. Yokes of iron upon that neck. See? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. This Jake right here. This is why you have to, certain songs like Jingle Bells, all right, have a darker meaning, because this gentleman right here is to keep our people from running away, what they would do with the bells on such devices as this. So you know, get entangled in the bush as you're running away and you hear them bells. All right. Let's go back to the video.
The administration started to immediately attack much of the gains of the civil rights period. And a lot of it was the ways in which black communities and black people were framed.
In Chicago, they found a woman who holds the record.
This woman here was the basis for the welfare queen trope. This one woman here, she was a piece of work, to say the least. All right. That's how they based that whole thing on. And then you had some videos in the 60s where they used that, where, you know, they had interviews with certain single Jake women, you know, all rolled up in one. But this was the main character that they based that shit on.
Used 80 names, 30 addresses, 15 telephone numbers to collect food stamps, Social Security, as well as welfare. Her tax-free cash income alone has been running $150,000 a year.
So black women were deemed welfare queens, and the rhetoric against black males was this whole discussion around being tough on crime.
9 out of 10 Americans believe that the courts in their home areas aren't tough enough on criminals. And the cold statistics do demonstrate the failure of our criminal justice system to adequately pursue, prosecute, and punish criminals.
The political message mostly catered to...
Now, to be fair, the war on drugs actually started with Nixon. All right. Just to put that out there.
a white backlash against some of the racial progress that we started to see as a result of the Civil Rights Acts and laws. He's also responsible for implementing cuts that crushed black communities across the United States. So you had after-school programs, you had free programs to help, young black kids stay off the streets. So whether it was, learning how to play instruments, learning different arts and craft programs, learning how to act and sing, you had all of these programs in black communities across the United States that contributed significantly to the arts and the advancement of black communities and black people. And essentially all or much of these programs were slashed as part of Reagan's economic programming. And this happened all across the country. This was a national cut that my friends from different parts of the United States felt the same impact. And of course, this led to, the war on drugs, which essentially became a war on Black America. I saw this with my own eyes. I saw our communities go from having recreational centers in our communities where we could go and we could be busy and productive and use our talents to do certain things. And now when those no longer exist, all we really have now is the local corners and the local areas or the local parks where we could gather. But there's no infrastructure anymore. And so police started to target these communities and these places.
And today, cocaine and marijuana are found throughout our society from top to bottom. And that means corruption, top to bottom, and gang war violence.
And to think about it this way, we have many, if not all of the drugs, the illicit drugs that so many people were found in possession of are foreign grown substances. They don't grow anywhere within the United States, and they certainly don't grow in urban communities.
Okay, right there you have a sign that says welcome to Elmdale's Block Club, but this is ridiculous. There's no sense in them even having a sign there. You got too many drug problems right here in this one block.
Now, this lady that just walked out right here, that's standing on the porch. Now, she's a seller and a user.
So how did they land in predominantly black and urban communities, right? All at the same time. How did all of these drugs find their ways into black communities at a time when cuts were pervasive, at the same time that you had this mass militarization of police forcing?
Since 1981, federal funding for drug interdiction has tripled to over $1 billion. The government boasts of its victories and shows off the booty, but huge amounts of drugs continue to arrive.
At a time when black kids don't have any of the programming that they had just 5 or 10 years prior, and a lot of the job opportunities are gone because the deindustrialization is in full bloom, which came with the flooding of our communities with these drugs. And then so you have the discrepancies and sentencing around powder cocaine because mostly white.
Yeah, because you had your options in high school, all right, where you could go after a trade. You know, you might have, if you were the type to, for college, whether it was your family couldn't afford for you, to pay, or, you didn't have the grades, you could opt for, some type of trade like, electrician, plumber, whatever have you, auto mechanics, whatever. But then that was cut. I wonder why. So, what would you think would be the only option left? That's why the phrase, the pipeline, what is it, from school to prison pipeline? Yeah. Because our people forget we were brought over here to serve slavery. I just read you Deuteronomy 28th chapter. These were the curses that were put upon us. All right. And another one, Isaiah 42:22, about, it's plenty of traps and snares that this devil puts before us because they never intended, in fact, it was never intended for us to prosper here. This is not our rest, as the scriptures say. So yes, this is Isaiah 42, 42:22. Now, when I read this, just bear in mind what I just told you. This is Isaiah 42:22. But this is a people robbed and spoiled. You know what robbed mean? What is spoil? To plunder, destroyer. All right? Pretty much it's telling you twice what's happening to us. They are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. 13th Amendment, all right? The prison industrial complex, shortly thereafter. They are for a prey. What is a prey? That's what we are here in America and everywhere else we go. All right, booty. All right, spoil. And none delivereth. For a spoil, and none saith restore. which goes back to when I first started this video. I told you that Jake tried doing his own thing. Not once, not twice, repeatedly. And these people shitted on everything and destroyed everything we did. But we were still told, work harder. Get over it. Well, how are we supposed to get over it when you continue to shit on everything we do? Up to including now. So you hear all these people when they come over here, they tell me, see, we've only been here a few years, 1 or 2 generations, and look at us. Okay. Now, this is not to say, or, say there's no pity party or anything else. I'm just letting you know there's more to it. Now you're experiencing, because Jacob said, you know what? Why should we get out there and put ourselves on the line? For people that always want to constantly talk shit. Like they say, experience is the best teacher. And what do you have now? Like I say, this has not been, this has been, like I said, a pattern. Every time Jake looks like, so now these people are so disturbed about their past that it's all coming out. Like it says in Habakkuk 2nd chapter, verse 16, shameful spewing on their glory. They can't handle it. And we, by and large, Great Millstone and others affiliated, even those that aren't, they've made enough noise to where these people, we gotta, because the next step is what? Shutting down the internet, and we constantly be bringing that out. Amos 8, 11, and 12 is going to come to pass. This TikTok thing, these people, the wannabes, the issues, the JOOs, they've been hurt because of all this history that's been coming out. All the scriptures. 2 Corinthians 10 verses 4 and 5. Keeping it spiritual, not playing into their hands with carnality, as the scriptures there tell you. All right, let's go back to the video.
Folks, Wall Street kinds of folks were mostly, engaged with powder cocaine, whereas poor communities and black communities were mostly engaging with crack cocaine, the rock cocaine. So you had this imbalance in sentencing. You had this complete difference in sentencing, even though it's essentially the same product.
Karen Garrison is the mother of twins, Lamont and Lawrence. In 1998, they were arrested in Washington and charged with conspiracy to sell cocaine. Lawrence was sentenced to more than 15 years in prison, Lamont to over 19.
Nobody actually cared if they were innocent or guilty, because everybody that knew them knew they were innocent. But then when you talk to people that didn't know them, the first thing they kept saying is, well, why did they give them so much time?
One of the reasons the Garrison twins received such long sentences is because they were charged with selling cocaine in crack form rather than in powder. Federal law mandates a minimum 5-year sentence for intent to sell 5 grams of crack.
And this, for you boneheads that, that always or for the Democratic Party, this is the work of Clinton and Joe Biden in particular with that crime bill. All right, from the first Clinton administration, 1983. All right, but that wasn't the first time he tried to push that shit through. It goes back to the 70s. And you were so into this guy to make him president. And what did he do for you? Not a damn thing. The same thing as Obama before him. Boy, you really got tricked there, because all he was brought in for was the LGBTQ community, and to initiate this NDAA and all that other shit. All right. It's like Jake is just so easy, you know.
Weighs the same as 2 pennies, but it takes 500 grams of powder cocaine to trigger the same mandatory minimum.
I remember, for example, there was a police officer who would patrol our neighborhoods, and I'm talking about me as a young teenager. He would pull up in his police cruiser, and he would get on his microphone, and he would say to us, as we're all congregating in our neighborhoods, right, that we all were born and raised on, and he would say, "Okay, monkeys, okay, niggers, time to go home." And just casually, this is what he would say. This same particular cop, he would grab guys off the streets, and if they didn't have drugs on them, he would put them on them. If they didn't have a gun on them, he would put one on them. And then these guys would go away for long periods of time. And everybody that I know, every young black kid that I know from any of the major urban cities across the United States has an example like this.
Yeah, you run into my car, you can stop and talk to me, man. Yeah, that's right, nigga. I got the handcuffs on too. Bitch, you raised mother.
In my car, I'd have shot you.
Yeah, I would have shot back too.
Yeah, would you? You're a killer at heart. Here's your gun.
Yeah, I'm a killer.
All right.
So why you pushing me, man? What's wrong with you? Put hands off me.
And the level of dehumanization, the level of disrespect for us from in our neighborhoods, in our communities. And this is really what policing was like.
And last night, I tell you, to watch that thing on television, as I did, to see those monkeys from those African countries, and they're still uncomfortable wearing shoes.
Well, and then the tail wags the dog there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The tail wags the dog.
This is what that era, that Reagan era, ushered in for my generation and the generations after. And we see like today, if you look up statistics around, who are the people that are exonerated, whose cases are being thrown out. It's overwhelmingly black men, black people who you're seeing that they're found out through DNA evidence that they didn't commit the crime. It's not because the system is just like correcting itself or, being just or deciding to be just. It's just that you have cadres of lawyers. You have lawyers who are investing and trying to figure out, if you're lucky, who is in jail wrongfully. And then we're starting to see through the grace of good lawyers and good legal work, you're starting to see so many people having their sentences overturned. And then, when you have the example of the term the welfare queen, which was a myth. But, there were a lot of people in our communities who were on welfare. But you have to take this into context. You have to take the welfare system into context. Remember, this is on the heels of the civil rights legislation. And a big part of the civil rights legislation was the acknowledgement that black people have for centuries been legally disenfranchised. They were legally disenfranchised. And so the welfare system was an attempt to correct that.
And we know now that it was always them folks that were enjoying the most of this, if you go by the sheer numbers, not that percentage bullshit. All right? That's another thing that brought shame to these people in recent times, because now all this came out. They're the ones that benefited affirmative action. They mostly, white women. So we were fine when they cut it off. It didn't benefit us like it was supposed to anyway. And they tricked Moab, the so-called Chinese, all right, into leading the charge against it. And now, since it's been done away with, guess who's complaining? I did a couple of videos on that. All right. the so-called, well, one of them anyway, so-called model minority, thought they were so smart, and they thought that those seats that Jake has to work to get wherever he is. That's just a simple truth. And you fell for that shit that Ed Blum and those like him, I'm talking about Moab now, you believe that shit, and he pimped you like, I mean, damn. And now look at you. Hey, you got what you deserve.
That era to correct that wrong. And so 10, 15 years after black folks are using the welfare system, what happens is the welfare system is essentially contributing to the breakup of black families.
So she said, well, we doesn't lie the 80 some others with boyfriend. And I couldn't understand that. So she left. When she left, well, then she come back to tell me that my case was denied. This is what happened. She come back to tell me that they had denied me, that I could not get on the aid.
Weeping and crying for someone to love.
In Cleveland and elsewhere, very little economic incentive exists for women to get off welfare.
They would like for you to go out and go to work, or even seek part-time employment. But if you do this, then most of
I'm
what
gonna
you
pause
make
it right
is
here,
taken away.
Slovakia. Yeah, so as you can see, for those who always say, well, why do you always want to play the victim? You always want to play the race card. Well, what does this tell you? That we're targeted. So therefore, yes, we are victims. We have been. All the time we've been here in America. But there's light at the end of the tunnel, like I always used to like to say in my videos. All right, we're seeing these curses being transferred to our enemies. Deuteronomy 30:7. It's happening right in real time, right in front of your faces.
Away from you.
And so this, in order to benefit from the welfare system, which is also coincides with deindustrialization, when all the manufacturing jobs are essentially being shipped offshore to places like China.
I wonder why.
We're talking about an entire industry that was shift off overseas. And it's caused a lot of turmoil within black families. These are all products of the Reagan era economics, and we have to remember, this didn't happen in a vacuum. This is part of a connection. This is connected to the civil rights movement. This is connected to the people who fought for civil rights, and these were some of the remedies as a result of it. So Reagan was very intentional about unraveling and undoing so many of the civil rights era legislation and policies, and we're still suffering from these rollbacks. And even current presidents and every president since Reagan has been involved in rolling back civil rights.
And we will make America great again.
Ronald Reagan for president. Let's make America great again.
So today, if we look at rollbacks and the immigration policy, rolling back the Department of Ed, these are all civil rights era, industries or infrastructure that are being rolled back and attacked. But again, in order to understand these policies, we need to understand the history behind them. And the history behind them are fundamentally acknowledging a long history, hundreds of years of legal discrimination against black communities. This was the genesis for all of these policies that we're now starting to see roll back.
Israelites. Constantly targeted Israelites. So there you have it. I'm going to shut it down there. I think the point has been more than made. All right. This is not by accident, happenstance, or however you want to put it. Make America great again. Wow. Like I said, very little original about these people. You're going to find it somewhere back in history. It's been done before. All right, so with that, once again, I hope whoever views this video has been edified. That's what we do here at Great Millstone. Filter everything through the scriptures. All right, I'll let you know what time that you're in. And it just so happens, hey, we're almost out of here. You know, this is going to be a particularly revealing year. I'll say that. But in any case, I like to remind you to remain circumspect. Keep your eyes and ears open. All right, so with that, until next video, shalom.